It began with a single question that carried more poison than humor. Got balance? A question meant to humiliate, not to help. Inside one of New York's most prestigious banks, a teenage black girl stood at the counter, clutching a check that could silence any doubt. Instead, it ignited ridicule. The manager smirked, the wealthy clients sneered, and whispers spread like wildfire. To them, she was out of place. Someone who didn't belong among marble floors and million-dollar transactions. But what none of them knew was that this moment was a test, a trap carefully designed to expose something far darker than one man's arrogance. Within minutes, reputations would crumble, cameras would roll, and the truth would set fire to an entire empire. The only question is, whose empire would fall first? Before we start, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from? At just 15 years old, Alicia Johnson carried herself with a quiet confidence that most adults struggled to master. She wasn't the loudest in class, nor the kind to draw attention, but those who knew her described her as sharp, thoughtful, and unshakably determined. Growing up in New York City, she had learned early that being young, female, and black meant people would underestimate her before she even spoke. Instead of shrinking, she leaned into it, using every slight, every whispered comment as fuel to push harder. Her father, Michael Johnson, was no ordinary parent. In less than a decade, he had risen from a small business owner to the millionaire CEO of Sterling Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the country. His success provided Alicia with opportunities few teenagers ever experienced: private schooling, travel, and access to mentors who treated her like a future leader. Yet Michael never let her forget where they came from. He reminded her of the long nights when he counted pennies to keep the lights on, of the rejections he faced in boardrooms where his skin color spoke louder than his credentials. For Alicia, these stories weren't just family history. They were warnings. She knew the glittering glass towers and polished bank lobbies her father now controlled weren't built with fairness for everyone. They were built on centuries of gatekeeping, where people who looked like her were told, subtly or openly, that they didn't belong. Still, Alicia dreamed big. She had plans of her own. A future in law, maybe even politics, where she could challenge systems rather than simply survive them. But for now, she was still a teenager, balancing schoolwork with debates, basketball practice, and late-night study sessions. Her friends often joked that she was 15 going on 40, too serious for her age. Yet Alicia didn't mind. She believed preparation was everything, and she prepared for life the way others prepared for exams. Strategically, relentlessly, with no room for excuses. That's why, when her father confided his concerns about racial discrimination inside Sterling Bank, she didn't brush it off as another corporate problem. She leaned forward, listening closely as he explained how complaints had been piling up. Black and Latino clients reported being ignored, disrespected, or funneled into low-return products, while their white counterparts were welcomed with smiles and opportunities. The patterns were undeniable, but inside the executive offices, proving it felt like chasing smoke. Michael was troubled, but Alicia was intrigued. She asked questions no one else dared. What if someone tested the branches from the inside? What if they created scenarios where discrimination couldn't hide behind excuses? What if the truth could be caught in real time? At first, her father dismissed the idea. The thought of his 15-year-old daughter walking into banks alone, risking humiliation or worse, was unbearable. But Alicia was persistent. She reminded him that adults in expensive suits could blend in, but a teenager, especially a black teenager, would never be suspected of running a test. The very prejudice they wanted to expose could become her disguise. For weeks, she prepared. She studied bank procedures, rehearsed lines, and practiced keeping her composure under pressure. She wore a smartwatch her father had programmed to record and stream live footage. Every detail was planned, and though Michael worried, he eventually agreed. He knew his daughter's will was stronger than his fear. That preparation led her here, standing inside Sterling Bank's Midtown branch, the heart of the city's financial district. The lobby was immaculate. Polished marble floors, towering columns, and an almost oppressive silence broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the muted click of polished shoes. For most, it was a place of prestige. For Alicia, it was a stage, and she was ready for the performance of her life. She wasn't here by accident. She had chosen this branch carefully, knowing its reputation. Wealthy clients praised its exclusivity, but whispers of discriminatory treatment had reached her father's desk more than once. Today, she carried a check worth $55,000, an amount that would demand attention from any banker, no matter the client. Alongside it, she carried her school ID, proof of her age, and her resolve to stay calm no matter what storm came her way. Yet behind her steady exterior, Alicia's heart beat faster. She wasn't nervous for herself. She had rehearsed too many times for that. She was nervous about what she might uncover. If the suspicions were true, if this branch proved as toxic as the report suggested, then the world watching through her father's live feed would see the truth laid bare. And that was the point. This wasn't just about opening an account. It was about opening a window into a reality too many denied. What Alicia didn't know, as she walked toward the counter, was how quickly her test would spiral out of control. Within minutes, the atmosphere would shift from quiet routine to public spectacle. Strangers would reveal their prejudices. A manager would overplay his hand, and powerful men would find themselves cornered by evidence they could no longer bury. For now, though, the stage was set, and Alicia Johnson, 15 years old, underestimated by nearly everyone in that lobby, was about to shake the walls of an empire. The first sign of trouble came in the manager's eyes. Edward Collins, tall and suited in crisp navy, looked Alicia up and down as though she had wandered into the wrong world. His lips curled into a smirk, and the words slipped out with a sting meant to cut deep. "Got balance." It was a taunt, framed as a joke, but designed to diminish. Several clients within earshot chuckled, feeding off his arrogance. To them, it was entertainment. To Alicia, it was confirmation. She knew this was exactly the kind of moment her father had warned about. Still, she kept her composure. Without flinching, she set her school ID on the polished marble counter and, beside it, a check for $55,000. The laughter died. For a split second, even Edward's smirk faltered. But he recovered quickly, tilting his head with exaggerated suspicion. Instead of processing the check, he raised his voice loud enough for the lobby to hear. He accused her of fraud, mocking the idea that a teenager could hold such a sum legitimately. All around her, eyes turned. Melissa Carter, a wealthy-looking woman draped in designer silk, leaned toward her friend with a whisper sharp enough to cut through the silence. "This is why certain people shouldn't be allowed in serious institutions," she muttered. Her friend nodded, lips pressed in smug agreement. Alicia felt the heat of their stares, but she didn't break. She remembered her plan, the rehearsals, the camera strapped invisibly to her wrist. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to endure, to let their words reveal themselves. The manager's tone sharpened. He demanded verification. He suggested the check was stolen, maybe forged. Each word grew bolder, fueled by the approving glances of longtime clients like Mr. Howard, who shook his head in disgust. To them, Alicia wasn't a teenager with a dream. She was a disruption, someone whose very presence threatened the polished image of Sterling Bank. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. Frank, the branch's security guard, began moving closer, his hand hovering near his belt. His presence turned tension into intimidation. The message was clear. This wasn't just skepticism anymore. It was an escalation. Alicia's watch captured everything. Every smirk, every whisper, every hostile glance. And miles away, in a quiet cafe, her father, Michael Johnson, sat with Sterling's head of HR, Linda Park, and General Counsel, Anthony Reyes. They watched the feed in silence, their faces hardening as the situation spiraled. But the worst was yet to come. Edward Collins picked up the phone and, with a voice dripping in false authority, reported an attempted fraud in progress. Within minutes, the bank's glass doors opened, and two NYPD officers stepped inside. Officer Grant, tall and stern, and Officer O'Malley, quicker, sharper-eyed. Edward greeted them like reinforcements. He pointed at Alicia with a look of triumph, as if he had caught a criminal red-handed. The officers approached. The room fell silent. Clients leaned in, savoring the drama. Melissa Carter smirked behind her manicured hand. Mr. Howard adjusted his tie, satisfied that justice was being done. Officer Grant asked for identification. Calmly, Alicia handed over her school ID and passport. Both were valid, both undeniable. Still, Edward insisted the check was fake. His voice rose, trembling with desperation masked as authority. That's when the first crack appeared. Officer O'Malley tapped into the bank system, his brow furrowing as the details loaded. Within seconds, the truth was clear. The check was authentic, drawn directly from Michael Johnson's account, the CEO of Sterling Bank himself. The color drained from Edward's face. The smirk vanished. Around him, whispers turned into shocked murmurs. But before the tension could ease, Alicia spoke, not to defend herself, but to reveal the bigger truth. Over the past 7 weeks, she explained, she had visited 10 Sterling branches. Half treated her with respect. The other half treated her exactly as this one had, with hostility, suspicion, and prejudice. She detailed the contrast with her white friend Hannah, who had deposited nearly the same amount at this very branch the day before. Hannah had been offered coffee, addressed politely, and processed within minutes. No police, no humiliation. Gasps rippled across the lobby. The narrative was shifting, but Alicia wasn't finished. She revealed that everything, every second, was being recorded live. Her father, the CEO, was watching. So were Sterling's top executives. The weight of the revelation crushed the room. Edward staggered backward, his authority crumbling. Clients exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they had been witnesses not to a crime, but to a trap that exposed something far larger than one manager's arrogance. Then the doors opened again. This time it wasn't just the police. It was Michael Johnson himself, flanked by Linda Park and Anthony Reyes. Their entrance silenced even the boldest whispers. Edward froze, trapped between shame and fear. But even as Michael confronted him, the real storm had only begun. Alicia revealed hidden audio recordings, conversations where Edward had offered risky investments to white clients, pocketing commissions off the books. She explained how her cousin Marco and Aunt Rachel had joined her in testing other branches, gathering evidence of systemic discrimination. And just when the room thought it had heard everything, another figure stepped forward. Sophia Lynn, one of the few minority managers within Sterling, produced a flash drive. Inside it, emails and memos instructing staff to filter out undesirable clients to protect the bank's premium image. The silence that followed was suffocating. But it wouldn't last, because outside those glass walls, a reporter was waiting. And with cameras about to roll, the truth wasn't just staying in that branch, it was about to explode into the world. The lobby had already been shaken, but nothing could prepare it for what came next. Catherine Hall, a seasoned reporter from the Washington Chronicle, walked through the glass doors with a full camera crew. Microphones, lights, lenses, all pointed directly at the unfolding chaos. The bystanders who had smirked moments earlier scrambled to adjust their expressions, suddenly aware that this humiliation was no longer private. It was now a story the entire nation could witness. Edward Collins tried to regain control, his voice trembling as he barked at the cameras to leave. But it was too late. Every angle captured him, the sneer, the insults, the arrogance. Every second was immortalized, impossible to erase. Alicia raised her wrist, the watch still recording. "This isn't about me," she said firmly. "It's about the truth." And with that, she pressed a button that sent audio blasting through the lobby speakers. The voice that filled the room wasn't Edward's. It was deeper, colder, laced with authority. Gregory Hale, Regional Vice President of Sterling Bank. His words dripped with corporate calculation. Black and Latino customers get low-yield products. White money keeps us premium. Your bonuses depend on filtering properly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Melissa Carter's smug smile shattered. Mr. Howard's self-assured nod vanished. The wealthy clients, once eager to mock, now fidgeted nervously under the weight of undeniable proof. This wasn't just one manager's prejudice, it was policy. And then, almost on cue, the man himself appeared. Gregory Hale strode into the lobby with the confidence of someone used to power. His tailored suit, polished shoes, and carefully measured smile were meant to command respect. But he walked into a storm. Cameras swung toward him, officers straightened, and Edward, desperate, looked at him like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. Hale raised a hand, dismissive. "This is all out of context," he announced, his voice carrying the arrogance of a man who believed he could bend reality to his will. "Recordings can be twisted. Complaints can be fabricated. This girl," he gestured toward Alicia, "is being used." But Alicia didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye, her voice steady and cutting. "How can keeping white money in the bank ever be out of context?" The question landed like a hammer. Gasps rippled through the lobby. The cameras caught every flicker of discomfort on Hale's face, every bead of sweat forming at his temple. He tried to recover, but Alicia was already moving. One by one, she revealed the arsenal she had gathered. 47 recordings, 19 employee testimonies, dozens of internal emails. Each piece of evidence stacked higher, heavier, crushing the facade Hale had built. Sophia Lynn stepped forward, handing Linda Park the flash drive filled with damning communications. Catherine Hall's crew captured it all, broadcasting live. Edward Collins cracked under the pressure. His voice broke as he turned on Hale, shouting that he had only been following orders, that he had been trained to profile, that this entire scandal wasn't his fault. But the crowd wasn't buying it. They had seen his sneer, heard his mockery, watched his cruelty unfold. Now they saw the cowardice beneath it. The officers moved closer, no longer to protect but to contain. The evidence was overwhelming. This was fraud, discrimination, and corruption on a scale too vast to deny. Hale's empire was collapsing before his eyes, every lie unraveling in front of colleagues, clients, and the country. For Alicia, the moment was surreal. She had walked into this branch prepared for insults, maybe even confrontation. But what she had uncovered was far larger than she imagined. This wasn't just about one bank. It was about an entire system of gatekeeping and exclusion, laid bare in front of millions. Her heart pounded, but she stood tall, her 15-year-old frame radiating a strength that silenced even the most powerful men in the room. Then came the final blow. Alicia played one last clip. Hale himself, in a private meeting, boasting that Sterling's future depends on keeping the wrong kind of money out. The words echoed through the lobby like a confession. Hale's face drained of color. For the first time, the man who had built his career on intimidation looked small. The cameras closed in. The officers exchanged glances. Linda Park and Anthony Reyes stepped forward, their presence making it clear this wasn't just a scandal. It was a reckoning. And in that charged silence, the walls of Sterling Bank seemed to close in. Careers were ending. Reputations were burning. A corporation's carefully polished image was crumbling before the world's eyes. But the story wasn't over. Because while Edward Collins and Gregory Hale faced their downfall, a larger question loomed. What would become of Sterling Bank, its thousands of employees, and the clients who had trusted it? And most of all, what would this moment mean for Alicia Johnson, the 15-year-old girl who had turned arrogance into evidence and humiliation into revolution. When the officers finally moved in, the lobby erupted in a storm of flashing cameras and hushed gasps. Edward Collins, once smug and untouchable, was led out in handcuffs. His face was pale, his steps unsteady, the weight of his downfall visible with every shuffle toward the police car waiting outside. Gregory Hale tried to resist, arguing, twisting words, insisting the recordings were taken out of context. But the evidence was undeniable. With the world watching, even his power couldn't shield him. He, too, was escorted out, his polished image shattering like glass beneath the boots of justice. For Alicia, the moment was surreal. She had expected pushback, maybe humiliation, perhaps even another dismissal of her voice. But she hadn't expected the collapse of an empire to unfold in front of her eyes. And yet, as powerful as it felt, she knew the battle was larger than just one branch, one manager, or one executive. This was about dismantling a system that had thrived on exclusion for generations. In the weeks that followed, Sterling Bank faced the fallout of its darkest secrets being exposed. News outlets replayed the footage daily. The recordings circulated across social media, sparking outrage and conversation. Hashtags trended. Protests were organized. Politicians weighed in. Sterling's stock plummeted, and the board was forced into emergency meetings, scrambling to protect what little reputation remained. But reform came only because it was demanded. Public pressure pushed Sterling into unprecedented settlements. $42 million paid to victims of discriminatory practices. Over 700 employees retrained or dismissed. And Sophia Lynn, the minority manager who had stepped forward with courage, was promoted to regional director, tasked with leading diversity and inclusion reforms that soon became a national model. As for Edward Collins, his name became synonymous with arrogance and downfall. Once a respected banker, he now worked a low-paying call center job, his every attempt at recovery overshadowed by viral videos of his cruelty. Gregory Hale's fall was even harder. Facing 21 federal charges, stripped of wealth, family, and reputation, he ended up at a modest desk job, a far cry from the empire he once controlled. And Melissa Carter, the woman whose whispers had gone viral, found herself unemployable. Every interview, every boardroom meeting, every public appearance was haunted by the video clip of her sneering at a teenage black girl. Privilege had once shielded her. Now it branded her. But amid the wreckage, Alicia Johnson emerged as something no one had expected. A national voice. At 16, she took the stage at a TEDx event, her talk titled, "The Price of Prejudice in Banking." 11 million people watched as she told her story, not with bitterness, but with clarity and purpose. Universities courted her. Princeton offered early admission. Her story sparked 2 states to pass the Alicia Johnson laws, prohibiting financial discrimination at the institutional level. Her father, Michael Johnson, could have used the scandal to cement his own legacy. But instead, he used it to push for reform across the banking industry. He became an advocate for transparency, urging CEOs nationwide to confront discrimination within their ranks. His message was simple. Profit built on prejudice is not profit at all. It's theft. And through it all, Alicia remained grounded. She still rode the subway. She still dressed simply. She still treated everyone with dignity. Because for her, the point was never attention, it was justice. The story of that day inside Sterling Bank's Midtown branch became more than just a headline. It became a reminder of how prejudice hides behind polished counters and corporate smiles. It showed how arrogance can blind powerful men, and how courage, even from a 15-year-old girl, can expose truths too heavy to bury. But perhaps the greatest lesson was this: discrimination doesn't collapse under silence. It collapses when it's dragged into the light, when the whispers are recorded, when the arrogance is exposed, and when the victims refuse to be diminished. As Alicia once said in her final interview, "They tried to diminish me. I used their arrogance to burn down their entire system of injustice." Her words still echo today. So the question is, how many more systems still stand on the same foundation of exclusion, waiting for someone brave enough to challenge them? And when the moment comes, will we be ready to stand, to speak, and to tear them down? Before you go, think about this. A single moment of arrogance nearly destroyed an empire, but it also gave a young black girl the power to spark change far bigger than herself. What do you think? Was justice truly served? Or is this just the beginning of a much larger fight? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments below. And if this story moved you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because we share stories that don't just entertain, but open eyes and inspire change.